All right, I'm going to start off by showing you some different tools. I've got them all laid out here on the wheel. Trim tools first. This is a large trim tool. You'll use it later on. This is a small trim tool. They both have their different reasons for using them, and we'll talk about those when we talk about trimming later on. This is a tool we use to write our name and also to do a little bit of scraping occasionally on the pots as needed. Also going to show you some sponges. Sponges come in different shapes and sizes. You'll have your favorite. I tend to like this one made by Mud Tools really a lot. This is two different ribs, a metal and a rubber. You'll get to like one maybe over the other. You'll use them for different things. Next is the sponge on a stick. You'll use that when your pot is a little bit too narrow to get your whole hand down in, or it's a little bit too tall to reach to the bottom. Next we have the needle tool and the wooden cutback tool. Needle tools, we measure the bottoms of pots here in a second, and this trims off excess clay along the bottom of a pot that you're making near the wheel head. This is a bat, lots of different kinds. This one's plastic and square. Just make sure that it fits on the bat pins well. And then you're going to grab your clay to get this started with. I'm using about 1.5 pounds or 2 pounds. Depending on what you'll make, you'll come up with different amounts of clay. Too little can be a problem, and early on when you're first learning, too much can be a problem. So you need to hit that sweet spot. You'll find out what that is over time. Clay that's a little bit softer would be better for you here at the beginning. Later on, harder clay can be good because it has a little more integrity to it and it will hold up, and the walls will stay up a little better for you. But here at the beginning, centering is the big deal, so softer clay helps you center better. So the first thing we're going to do is get our wheel head just a little bit wet. We want to make that sphere look kind of like a cone. You'll notice I tapped that into a cone before I started. Now I'm going to get this wheel head wet. It doesn't need to be too wet. Glossy wet would be too wet. We need it just to be kind of a matte finish, or a satin finish I should say. So we're going to just make it damp, not dripping wet. I'm going to plop this down in the middle. Sometimes you might need to scooch it around a bit to make sure it's in the right spot. You can even manually kind of move the clay around a bit before you actually attach it. You'll see me doing that. Then I'm going to have you take your thumb and or your finger and just kind of weld that seam all the way around where the base of the clay meets the bat, so that you can make sure your clay connects and stays on there well. I'm also going to take my finger and add a little bit of water, this time with the wheel spinning, so that we can kind of weld that together just a bit more, and it's going to really make sure this clay doesn't come off in our hands. Sometimes when your hands are dry and the clay's a bit dry, when you're coning and you're applying a lot of this upward pressure, the clay tends to come off the bat if you're not careful. Now with your hands really wet and the clay really wet, you're going to come in for the coning. The coning happens by squeezing in and simultaneously upward, equal, consistent pressure from both sides. All this pressure is happening in the palm of my hand. I'm not having any pressure in the fingers. Notice it's bigger at the bottom, smaller at the top. That's a real stable shape while we're on the wheel. All the pressure is coming from the palms of my hands, and more specifically the middle of the palm. And I'm squeezing in, squeezing up, and slowly coming up, and I'm slowly taking my hands off the clay at the top so that it doesn't come uncentered at the very top. You always have to release your hands slowly off the clay once you've been on there. So this now is the push down. You see my right hand is going to press forward. My left hand goes on top. You can have your left hand behind, your left hand in front. Some people even take their hand and make it kind of like a hatchet and come on top. My left hand is going to come at an angle down. My right hand is going to be like a bulldozer pressing forward to the left corner of the wheel. My left hand is coming down, just slightly diagonally down to my right foot. And you can see it's all happening there in the palms of my hands. You can see where the clay is building up. You do want to have your hands, your fingers wrapped around, but you don't want to really use them a whole lot. I'm pressing very hard forward with my right hand, and my hand is staying close to the bat. You can see it's beginning to get more centered. Still trying to stay in that cone shape, more like a beehive perhaps now. Always adding water every time, squeezing in and up again. Nice and slow, slowly releasing my hands off the clay, adding more water, and pressing back down again. Again, that left hand is coming at a slight angle down. My right hand is pushing pretty straight and forward like a bulldozer to that left corner of my wheel, my table of my wheel. I'm going to take a cut tool here and cut off just a little bit of excess clay at the bottom. That bottom part is really hard to center at the very bottom, so Sometimes I'll come with a cut tool and just kind of scrape that away. Take this extra stuff off the base and maybe a touch more water. We're going to just clear up. You can see it's centered when your finger doesn't bounce around. Your finger should just sit still. Maybe give it one more touch, a little bit more of a center, and we're ready for the next move. You can see my fingers touching. It's not shaking at all. This whole time your body is very close to the wheel. You can see there in the top left my legs are really hugging the splash pan. Now I'm going to come and cross my thumbs at the top and put a slight indentation. This is a little bullseye here so that I can tell where my fingers, my two thumbs are going to come together. I'm going to add some water. It gets dry pretty quickly. My hands are touching the clay, fingernails together, thumbnails together, thumb knuckles together. We're going to put these together as one unit down into the clay. They're going to plunge down. It pretty quickly gets dry. As you can see, it's not glossy. It's matte finish now. We're going to add water, and we're going to press down inside, kind of making a volcano shape. We're going to try to go down to about 1/4 of an inch ultimately, but really a 1/2 an inch at this point would be totally fine. You can trim some of that away later. Just really trying to find that bottom. Now we're going to take some water out of the middle so we can see what we're doing. I'm going to stop the wheel, grab our needle tool. I'm going to show you now how to measure it. You're going to use one hand and you're going to slide it through the bottom of the pot. I'm going to pretend my hand is the bottom of the pot now. So you can slide it down through till the tip hits the bat. Then you're going to slide your finger down and make it touch the bottom and then hold it and mark it. And you can see a little fuzzy there, sorry for that. Let's see how deep mine is. Going down, picking it all up together. And you can see there, we're about at 1/4 of an inch, maybe 1/2 an inch. So now we're going to do the next move, adding some more water. Always add water to the clay in your hands. The wheel speed is full now. It's been full the whole time. You can come back a little bit on this, but my right hand is in basically the same position it has been. My left hand cups in behind my right, and my fingers go down inside. It can be a middle finger, it can be an index finger, it doesn't matter. But I'm going to pull that finger toward my palm, scraping it along the bottom, trying not to let my finger slide up in the air, but to keep it parallel with the wheel head because we want a flat bottom on this piece. So I'm bringing it toward my palm. My palm might even come toward my body just a bit, my right palm. And you can see it went from a V inside to like a 45-degree angle inside to a 90-degree inside. So from a 45 to a 90, and we want a wall that is straight there, but pretty thick. The wall is really thick right now so that we can do our next move. I'm also going to come inside and take my thumbnail and scrape toward the center. Sometimes you get a little button on the inside middle if your finger went down too much on the whole opening. I'm also going to take my sponge and press down. I'm going to take my finger or my thumb now and go from the outside to the middle and from the middle back to the outside. This is compressing that bottom so that we won't get S-cracks. We need to compress that so that we don't get cracks in the bottom of the pot later. Okay, now we're ready to do the fun part, which is pulling. So I'm going to slow the wheel down now. You saw the wheel slow down. I want to go to the middle speed, maybe just a little bit below middle, and I'm going to take some water in my sponge and I'm going to squirt it, let it drip on the rim so it goes on the outside of the pot and the inside of the wall. We want really slick. I'm going to take the sponge and wrap it around my finger. If you have a smaller sponge, it might look kind of like this with the natural sponges. This is so you get a little bit of water on the tip of your finger there. And you can do it without the sponge, not necessarily have to use the sponge, but I just like to use it. You'll see that my left hand goes in, right hand goes down at the base. I want to take my thumb and keep it touching my hand in some way for support. I'm going to gently squeeze inside from the left and outside from the right. And as I'm squeezing, I'm going to slowly work my way up that wall, compressing that clay at the bottom and pressing it up toward the top, kind of like you're squeezing the bottom of a toothpaste bottle and it would squirt out the top. We're going to even those walls out as we come up, adding more water on the rim, going back to the bottom for another pull. You can see that it's lifting that clay up, working its way to the rim, and then we're going to pause at the rim for a moment and then slowly take our hands away. Always got to release your hands slowly at the top. If you take your hands away too easily, or if you let your fingers come up and touch, it's going to be a tough thing. Now I'm going to pretend that I've messed the rim up. Maybe it's a little bit wonky up there, which it does, and I'm going to cut this off by coming here and pushing in, and then like a hinge on a door, I'm pushing through, and then once it's through, you lift up, And it gets a little worse at the first part, but then you take your fingers, two fingers on the left hand, one finger on the right, and you stay right in the middle front of yourself and you touch. It's the 3-finger touch, or the H, some people call it. And then you just steady that rim by touching it just gently. More water on the rim. Thumbs touching, my hands at the bottom, both hands at the bottom, squeezing gently, slowly working my way up until I get to the rim. I'm going to pause at the rim and slowly take my hands away. Clean the rim up just a bit. At this point, the walls are a little thicker than what you need them, so I'm going to start a shaping pool. You can shape by pushing more from the inside than the outside and make it go out like this. Right hand was just there for support. Or you can have the right hand have more pressure, right finger, less pressure from the inside, and you can go in, and then you can flare it back out again with more pressure from the inside hand, less pressure from the outside hand. Now this open form has a little bit of movement to it. If it's still thick, you can do a pull straight through all that and get yourself back to where you were. We want to go down to about 1/4 of an inch or maybe just a touch less when it's all said and done. And right now we're a little over that, so we have some room to make some changes. I'll go now and get my pulls more toward where they need to be with 1/4 inch. Even if you want to make a bowl, you can. I'm going to show you now. Cleaning the inside out, actually. At some point here, you get so much water on the inside because you've been squirting water on the rim that you got to get that water from the inside. So we're going to take the water out. We're not finished with the pot yet, but we're going to, midway through, we're going to just stop and clean things out and get this slip off the rim. I'm going to come with a rib now and take some of that slip off the outside edge. You'll see the slip gather up. This is just extra weight. Doesn't need to be there at all. It just gets into the pot and makes the pot droop. Get too much water on there. So take some slip off. Then we're going to add water right back on. Water is lighter than slip, so it's not going to have that same issue. Now I'm going to show you how to do what's collaring. People call this collaring or choking. I got my hands wet, and I can pretend that I'm coning again. It's sort of like the coning action, and I can change the shape of this pot by doing some collaring. So I've pulled it back in so that my pot doesn't get too much out of control. A little bit more water on the rim. Now I'm going to show you how I could collar, but I could also make this pot really wide. So little by little, I'm going to ease this pot out. I have more pressure from the inside, less pressure from the outside, and I'm going to go over and over again and ease this pot out. I'm kind of laying down on it to open this up and make a bowl. You can make a bowl from a cylinder. You can make a bottle from a cylinder. You can make anything from a cylinder. Anything you want to make. A teapot, which you'd have to make a lidded jar first. You can make those from cylinders. You can see now that bowl's taking shape. It's down to about 1/4 of an inch now. We're going to come inside here and clean the inside water out. You can see it gathered up, so a damp sponge touching the base while the wheel's moving. Clean a little bit off the rim. I'm going to come with a chamois now, which is a little piece of leather, wet leather, and you just gently lay it on there and kind of wrap it around. You don't want to press down on it, you just want to touch it, and that's going to smooth that rim down and push those molecules tighter together so they'll make the rim stronger. You got a wire tool that's really in the cut tool we're going to use. First we're going to cut a little bit off the bottom edge to make that bottom edge less curvy and more vertical, or a 45-degree angle under there so that this string will be able to catch in there. This is fishing wire, thick fishing wire. We're going to hold it really tight like dental floss, flat against the back, pulling back toward our body. You can see the shape change a bit. Don't freak out by that. Come through, and now the pot is loose. And we're going to get our hands and put a little bit of slip in the corner. You might have to grab some slip from around the edge of the splash pan there, and we're going to put our initials. Really important you put your initials on your bat so that we can tell everything apart. Then you take it off, and we're going to take it over to the black cabinet or the greenish, brownish, grayish cabinet over there. We're going to put it in and should be able to come back 24 hours later and have that pot ready to trim.